Hi everyone, my name is Xavi Haro, and today in my speech I will try to explain you which is the physical profile of a training week. So before we start talking about this physical profile of the training week, your design of the training week must be based on something, and in this case we will base our design of the week in the physical profile of tasks. So it means that depending of your training philosophy, who is a head coach, who is a strength and conditioning coach, which is the club or the country you are working for, which are the goals and objectives of this club, of the country, etc. And thinking that we are working in a team sport, you have to create your own training philosophy. And in this case, as I told you before, my microcycle will be based on the physical profile of tasks. And this is based on the proposal of Professor Cerulo and also in the proposal of the Portuguese group. So it will be a mix between the structured microcycle and the tactical periodization. So in one hand we have our training philosophy, but in the other hand we must have what science is telling us nowadays about which is the time that we need to recover from different training loads. So if we mix our training philosophy, if we also use what science is telling us nowadays, and we try to validate it using the GPS data, we will have a very clear microcycle or a very clear profile of this training week. So this training philosophy, this way of understanding training in team sports, is something that we have been using or applying in Real Club de Polo de Barcelona for 10 years, together working with Carlos García Cuenca. In the national team, we are also using something similar, but as you know, in the national team, we are not having a match every week. So the organization of the week will be very different. So we said that we will organize the training week depending on the physical profile of task. And before we continue, we need to answer these three major questions. Which is the main objective of the week? And which is the most demanding day of the week? Which is the physical profile of every single task? Because every single task that we are doing in training has a physical profile. And last, where I will place every task depending on this physical profile. So next, which is the main objective of the week? And which is the most demanding day of the week? I think that we all have clear that the most important moment of the week in a club or also in a national team will be the match day, or will be winning this match day. And we also know that the most demanding day of the week in terms of physical conditioning will be match day. So all our week will have to be designed based on the objective. So our players will need to be in the best shape of the week, in the best moment of the week, in the match day. So we will organize all the things that we are doing in the week just for the match day. So we said the most important moment of the week is the match day. And now we need to know which is the physical profile of every single task. And for this, I will use the GPS data. And later, where I will place every task depending on this physical profile. And for doing this, I will use what science is telling me about what kind of load needs more time or less time to recover. So now I have the most important moment of the week. I know which is the profile of every single task, and the science is telling me where I have to place it. And the next 2 or 3 slides will be the most important in the speech, because we must understand that every single task that we are doing in practice will have a different effect in our player. And depending of this effect, and depending of the characteristics of the task, I will need to place this kind of task in a different day of the week, because I need to allow my player to recover completely for the most important day of the week, for the match day. And depending of the constraints and the characteristics of the task, I will need more or less time to recover. Let's see 2 examples. Here we have a comparison between a large-sided game and a small-sided game. And you can see different data from the GPS. Let's see, for example, the first one. Here you have the amount of accelerations of the large-sided game versus the small-sided game. And here also the amount of decelerations. So in this moment, this is telling me that when the pitch is smaller, the amount of accelerations or decelerations will be higher in small-sided games. And when the pitch is longer, the amount of accelerations and decelerations will be lower. But, for example, in the amount of sprints, when the pitch is big, we will have a lot of sprints, but when the pitch is small, we will not have sprints. So, this is just to see that every single task that we are doing is absolutely different and has a different profile. So, we need to know this effect to place it in the right moment of the week. And here we have two more examples. We are comparing 2 against 2 counterattacks versus a large-sided game. If we look at the GPS data, in the amount of high-speed running, in the 2 against 2, because we are doing it in a short space, in a small space, the amount of high-speed running will be very low. But in the 9x9, we are doing it in a large space, we will have a lot of high-speed running. If we look at the quantity of accelerations for every minute, in the 2 against 2, as we are doing it in a small pitch, we are changing speed a lot of times every minute. In the 9x9 is absolutely different. So the most important idea of this slides is that every single task will have a different effect in our player. So I will need to know this effect to place this task in a different day of the week, because the most important objective of the week will be the match day. So our players will need to be in the best shape in this most important moment of the week. And here you have the result of organizing this week depending on the physical profile of the task, and also the result of answering these 3 major questions. And we will divide the week in 3 important moments, on 3 separate moments. In the first moment of the week, the goal will be to recover my player from the most demanding day of the week, from the match day. So we'll have what we call match day +1, a day off. Later, an optimization phase, that is what we are going to see in this speech. And finally, a tapering phase. Okay, so all the week will be organized depending on what we have here, and thinking that the most important moment will be the match day. So now that we have the physical profile of the training week, we need to know what we have to do in every single day. Here we have the match day, that we said that is the most important day and also the most demanding day of the week. In the match day +1, we have a very small amount of strength, endurance, and speed. And in the most important moment of the training week, in the optimization phase, we have the match day -4, where the amount of strength training will be higher, and the match day -3, where the amount of endurance training will be higher. Finally, we have the tapering phase, where the speed training will be very important. And why we are doing this kind of organization? In match day -4, I am doing the most of strength training, just a little of endurance training, and just a little of speed training, because science is telling me that in this case, strength training needs between 48 to 72 hours for a complete recovery. In the match day -3, most of training is endurance training, because science is telling me that I need a little less of time to recover than strength. So the most important days of the week in terms of training will be match day -4 and match day -3. In this case, in match day -2, as we are very close to match day, I will only train a little of strength, a little of endurance, and maybe the highest amount of speed. So everything of this organization has the main objective of arriving to the match day in the best shape of the week. So let's focus on the optimization phase in the match day -4 and match day -3, and we are going to use the data from the GPS to validate if the tasks that we are doing in these days are really preference strength or preference endurance. As we saw before, every single task that we are doing in a training week, in a training session, has a different effect on the player. So we need to know which is its effect to place it in a different day of the week. In this case, as we said, I'm going to use the data from the GPS to know if the match day -4 is the priority strength and if the match day -3 is the priority endurance. Let's see. Okay, but talking about strength and endurance in field hockey, as you can see in the videos, we need to think for what kind of in-game actions I need the strength and endurance. I need the strength, for example, for acceleration, deceleration, changing direction, also for body contact, also for passing, shooting, drag flicking, etc. And I need endurance in field hockey for high-speed running, for making a lot of sprints during a match, for being able to have a good technical and tactical skills along the 60 minutes of the match, etc., etc., etc. These are the kind of actions for which I need strength and endurance in field hockey. Okay, so with the physical profile of this training week, in the match day -4, we are going to talk about what we should do in match day -4 in the technical tactical sessions. Here you have that in the match day +1, match day -4, and match day -3, we are also doing a strength training in the gym, but here you have the characteristics of the technical tactical sessions in the pitch. In the match day -4, we say that we should do preference strength tasks, and all these exercises where passing, shooting, changing direction, acceleration, deceleration should appear more in the match day -4. This training task will have the smallest size of the week, usually low quantity and low density of players, from the 1-to-1 to 8 against 8, and until 100 meters. So it means 25 for 25 meters. This is usually what we call small-sided games. The ratio between the task space and the number of players should be dense. The complexity of tasks should be moderate to low. Very important, the task intensity should be very high, but with a very short duration. The recovery time between reps of the same task should be medium short, but between different tasks should be high because the intensity is very high. The duration of these tasks should be between 1 to 4 minutes, and as we said, before training we are doing strength in the gym. So if we want to create reference strength sessions for the match day -4, we should follow these characteristics, and this is based on what science is telling me. Here you have a list of most important authors for me, and also is based in our experience of analyzing every single task during more than 2 years. Okay, so we have said that in the match day -4, before going to the pitch and making the technical tactical training, we are going to the gym and we are making strength training. Here in the videos you have some examples of the strength training we are doing, in this case with the national team, and as you can see, most of our work it's based on movement. So well, here you can see a good example of the kind of strength training we are doing in the gym for the last 5-6 years. Okay, but what are we doing in the technical tactical sessions when we are trying to make preference strength trainings? Okay, in the conditioning part of the session, we are doing, for example, this kind of circuits that you can see, where passing, shooting, acceleration, deceleration, jumping, landing, changing direction, body contact, etc. It's appearing constantly. So if we make this kind of work, and we have seen that in field hockey strength, it's about accelerate, decelerate, changing direction, we are doing this kind of work to try to create preference strength training. In this case, you have two examples with the national team. Okay, as you can see, different training tasks. The players are performing the task for a short period of time, then we make a short brief and we change what we are doing. And here you have two more examples of this strength training or preference strength training in the pitch. As you can see, players are accelerating, decelerating, changing direction, making body contact, okay, jumping, landing, etc. All these kind of actions that we understand that in field hockey are preference strength. And here you have, in the technical tactical part of the session, you can see two different examples of two small-sided games. In the left side, a small-sided game with goalkeepers. In the right side, a small-sided game without goalkeepers. All these kind of tasks, small-sided games with this kind of organization, with different rules, will allow players to have more strength actions, accelerating, decelerating, passing, shooting, etc., etc. So we understand that this kind of exercises will be preference strength, and we will use it and we will place it in the match day -4 of the week. Okay, so now we are going to look at the data of the GPS, and we are going to use the GPS to validate our training. Okay, so from all the data that I can download from the GPS, I will only look at these items that you have here. In the case of strength, accelerations and decelerations count, the magnitude of these accelerations and decelerations, and also how much times I am accelerating and decelerating for every minute. And if we follow the characteristics that we saw a few slides before, that the task should have a small space, a small quantity of players, etc., and we place it in the match day -4, that is where the science is telling me that I should do it. Let's see what's happening with these items of strength from the GPS. And here, as you can see, the amount of accelerations and decelerations are the highest in the week. Also, the magnitude of these accelerations and decelerations are the highest of the week, but also how much times I am changing my direction and changing my speed every minute, it's also the highest of the week. So it seems that, at least from a conditional point of view, we are doing the correct tasks and we are placing it in the correct day. And in this day match day -4, what is going to happen if we look at the endurance items of the GPS? For example, the high speed running, the sprints count, the high metabolic load distance. As you can see here in the graphs, these items of high speed running, high metabolic load distance, etc., in the match day -4, if we follow the characteristics of the match day -4, we'll have the lowest amount of data of these endurance items. And here in the pink graph, you can see the player load. That is a general overview of the amount of load that a player it's suffering during the week. So here you can see that in the match day -4 is the second highest day of the week of training load, and match day -3 that we are gonna have a look now will be the highest load of the training week. So now we arrive to the match day -3. Is the second day of this optimization phase, and also we are doing strength training in the gym before going to the pitch. And which are the characteristics of the tasks in the pitch? We said that in this match day -3, the load preference should be endurance, and for being this endurance preference, task should have high speed running, sprints, total distance, and this kind of action, this kind of items should appear more. This training task will have the biggest size of the week, usually with a high quantity and high density of players, usually from 14 players and goalkeepers to 20 players or 22 players. This is what we call large-sided games or medium-sided games. Okay, but in this case, medium-sided games with a low quantity of players, but in a large space. The ratio between the task space and the number of players should be low density. We must use a big space and low quantity of players, and also will be endurance priority, but in this case with a very high intensity. The recovery time between reps will be very short because we are trying to make endurance training. The duration of this task will be long, more than 4 minutes every rep. The complexity of the task will be very high because the tasks will be very similar to the real competition. And finally, we are also using repeated sprint training and high intensity interval training tasks. And as we said, before going to the pitch, we are making strength training in the gym. And here you can see again some examples of this strength training that we are doing before going to the pitch in the match day -3. In this case, you have some players from the national team and also some players from polo. And as you can see, most of our training is based on movement, and the main objective of this strength training will be also to prevent injuries of the players. Okay, let's continue. So, in this match day -3, when we go to the pitch, these are two examples of the kind of work we are doing. All our endurance training, it's based on the repetition of high intensity actions. And you can see two different circuits where the players are performing different actions. Okay. Okay, and something more similar to what is the game of field hockey, what technical tactical actions we are doing. And here you have two more examples. In the left side, an example of combinations, accelerations, high-speed running, sprints, and shooting on goal. And in the right side, it's an evolution from a 3 against 2 to a 3 against 3. So if you look at this kind of actions, we have a very large space of pitch, in this case with a low quantity of players, but look at the amount of high-speed running that the players are doing. So this task will be preference endurance. So here you have two more examples. In the left side, they are evolutions of 3 against 2, okay, with finalization. And in the right side, you have a 6 against 6 with 6 goals. And depending of the position of the goal, you can get 1 or 2 points. So as you can see, this organization of the tasks, large size of pitch, depending of the intensity that I want to do, more or less players, but we have to think that these kind of actions will allow players to make a lot of high-speed running, they will make a lot of sprints, and it will be very, very different from the priority strength tasks. So let's see the GPS data. So now the GPS data, if we look at the endurance items of this GPS, high-speed running, sprints count, and high metabolic load distance, and we follow the characteristics that we saw a few slides before, we can see how the amount of accelerations, decelerations, the magnitude of these accelerations, decelerations, and how many accelerations and decelerations I'm making every minute in the match day -3 will be the lowest of the week. And in comparison, the endurance items will have the highest amount of the week. So that means that, at least from a point of view of the data, we are doing the correct organization and the correct tasks to let the players arrive to the most important day of the week, to the match day, in the best shape. Okay, and finally, and you can see in here in the pink graph, the amount of load that a player is suffering during the week in the match day industry will be the highest. And finally, in this slide, and following the physical profile of this training week, I also think about if we are training very much, if we are not training enough, what are we doing, and all these kind of things are always in my mind. So here we can see a general view of the week, in this case with the match day +1, with the match day -4, -3, and the match day -2. And in this case with the high metabolic load distance. And as you can see, depending of what I'm doing in every day of the week, the amount of this high metabolic load distance will change. So it means that in the match day +1, the high metabolic load distance that the match day is demanding me, I will make only the 25% in the match day +1. In the match day -4, I will make the 48% of this high metabolic load distance of match. In the match day -3, I will make the 74%, and in the match day -2, I will make the 26%. So it means that I'm following like an progression and an overload in the middle of the week, and then a tapering phase. It's happening the same with the high speed running, when at the beginning of the week it's very low, and in the match day -4 and -3 will be higher, to go down again in the match day -2 in the tapering phase. So at least, as we said, we are making the right dynamic of loads during the week. And finally, a take-home message. All the coaches, you should listen and let work your strength and conditioning coaches. And if you don't have a strength and conditioning coach, what can I do with all this information? First of all, and the most important thing, on Monday morning, sit down and design all the exercises that you want to do in the week. This is something that sounds very simple, but it's very difficult to do. Design all the exercises that you want to do in the week. Step number 2, separate these exercises depending of the load preference. And now we have seen how we can make a difference between a strength training or endurance training, even with the technical tactical tasks of a training session. And step number 3, to place these exercises that you have designed on Monday morning in the right day, depending of this load preference. Because science, as we have said a lot of times before, science is telling me that I need more or less time to recover. So I need to put the right load in the right day. So finally, thank you all. I hope that you enjoyed this speech, and I also hope that you learn something and that you can apply it in your daily training sessions. Thanks and bye.